king without a real crown, and soon without a head.
To the horn grip. Bid the darkness.
A cowardly trick. It won't save you.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to explain how the Rambo wizard works. This build basically revolves around this unique staff, the unborn lich, and the skill his scattering calamity. So this spell basically works similar to Ember Fusilid, right? So you fire off the orbs, and when they hover, after a short while they will fire off. And you're seeing now I am shooting quite fast, and that is because we're getting reduced skill effect duration. So the way you get that is on the tree, you get these nodes that are reduced skill effect durations. You get one here as well. So normally together these two passive clusters give you 64% reduced skill effect duration, but we're actually going Titan here. So with Hulking Form, you get increased effect of small passive skills, which works on these small nodes. So in total with Titan, we actually get 80% reduced skill effect duration. And you pair that with Compressed Duration 2 and Swift Affliction 3, you can get your Scattering Calamity firing time to around 0.1 seconds, which is pretty good. And also, Scattering Calamity has the same line as Ember Fusilid, where if you recast while it's still hovering, it would actually reset all the duration of active well sprites. So what we want to do is we want to control the cast speed so that it's a little slower, such that, so we're doing that with consider casting, so it doesn't refresh before it fires off. So with kind of controlled cast time of 0.38, it looks something like this. They're able to fire off without resetting their duration, which is good. So you're also seeing that I'm firing off multiple projectiles here. So we're firing off 3 projectiles per cast. This is done, there's many ways to do this. The most obvious way is to use multi-shot, but we're already sacrificing 2 support gems here for less duration. So we don't really want to sacrifice more damage here. So what we're going to do is we're going to stack this mod here that appears on staff, which is % chance for spells to fire 2 additional projectiles. This mod could also appear on runes, as you could see here. Each rune gives 25%. And if you can't get this stat high enough, or if you can't get this rune, you could also grab it on the tree, I believe, over here. You get quite a lot of percentage additional projectile here. From my initial testing, going above 100% doesn't really do anything. Even if it does, we are bottlenecked by this firing limit launch duration. So even if you have even additional projectiles up to 5, it doesn't really work that well. You're not really increasing your DPS. You just have to cast less. So yeah, that's basically the main mechanic of his Scattering Calamity. But from the video, you can also see that I'm firing off sort of like a Gatling gun. Now that is done through cast on crit and cast on elemental ailment. So his Scattering Calamity has pretty good base damage, and it also has pretty good base critical hit chance. With that and some gained fire damage from both our staff and from our jewels, you could actually make it so you are consistently critting and also applying shock and ignite. So that is working with cast on crit. So we are triggering both 2 copies of Frost Dart here. So even though we can only have 1 copy of a single active skill, it doesn't really apply to skills socketed in Metal Gems. So we could have 2 copies of Frost Dart here. And they're supported by Boundless Energy, Elemental Focus, since they can't really apply Chill anyways, and Energy Retention to fire off more. And then one of them has Blind, while the other and our Scattering Calamity has Blind Sight, which just boosts their crit damage and crit chance even more. So Frost Dart is also one of the few skills that also benefits from shotgunning with additional projectiles. So we're actually firing off 5 projectiles per trigger for each of these. So we're getting the Gatling gun effect pretty consistently. Now, how are we going to solve our mana issue here? Since we're casting so fast, we're also triggering cast on crit and cast on elemental ailment so fast with a high level spell as well. We have to kind of solve our mana problem. So you've known here that I actually took Blood Magic, which converts all our skill mana cost to life cost. In return, we have no mana. Along with that, we could get the Undying Hate, Timeless Jewel. And this gives us, when you have Tribute to Tech Rod, this gives us the Keystone, Sacrifice of Blood, which makes it so you regen life based on the life cost that you spend on skills. It gives more life cost per skill, but that is something that is actually good, because that life regen scales with life regeneration rate. So we are actually regenerating more life than what we're spending. So with very rapid cast, we're having extremely high regen. So if we spam a little bit more cost, you can actually see that our regen goes up to around 3,000, which is good. Now, this is not really new tech. I've seen people already doing it with Blood Mage, which is much stronger and much higher regen and survivability. We're just doing this for the sake of sustaining our mana. And it's a nice little bonus to our survivability, a little bit. Yeah, you could probably go mana if you can afford, because last time I checked, the Undying Hate Jewel with Tech Rod is around 9 Divine, so it's not really cheap. So you could actually go mana. You just have to invest in, let's say, probably Arcane Surge and some mana regen, and I believe you will be able to sustain mana if you get some mana cost efficiency as well. And in return to that, all you have to do is, if you're stacking mana, you could just gain, instead of gain spell damage per max life, you could gain spell damage per max mana. That works too. So I believe stacking mana would work. I just went with stacking life because it's a little easier. And also we're a Titan, so we have more life on our tree here. Yeah. So since we're stacking life and we're spending life to cast spells, we're gaining damage from our spell damage per max life. We want as much life as possible. So we could use the Veil of the Night, which gives a massive amount of increased max life. You could get a corrupted one that goes past the 50%. In return, we have no elemental resistance, which is fine in this case because this league, we have mods such that armor also applies to elemental damage. You get that on gear, you get that on tree, and this actually stacks over 100%. So right now, we actually have more than twice the amount of armor we have applying to elemental damage. So even though we don't have any elemental resistance, we can actually survive elemental hits. And also, this is good because we don't have to worry about elemental resist at all, so that's one less thing to worry about. So yeah, we get some increased maximum life on our rings as well as the armor applying to elemental damage. And these give us a pretty hefty health pool right here. So yeah. Now to boost our damage, his Scattering Calamity and our triggered Frost Dart already gives us plenty of damage, but we want to boost them further. So remember that we are stacking 80% reduced skill effect duration. So the first thing that we could use is Time of Need, Now, shout out to Neato for bringing this up. So if we get time of need with compressed duration and a lot of reduced skill effect duration, we could actually make it so that time of need heals us every 1.27 seconds, which is a lot. It also removes elemental ailment and curses, so running curse maps doesn't affect us at all. You can open strong boxes, it'll freeze you, and immediately you'll get cleansed. And you can also increase the level of time of need through corruption, as well as the Prism of Belief. And these, I believe, are super cheap for a +3. And we're also using Orb of Storm with our reduced skill effect duration, since Orb of Storm leaves elemental infusions, or lightning infusion in particular, if it expires. Now, you cannot override it. It has to expire either through casting 6 times or it runs out of time. With enough reduced skill effect duration, our Orb of Storm actually just leaves on the field for 0.65 seconds. Our cast time is 0.55 seconds, so with overabundance, you get one limit, which doesn't override Orb of Storm. We could just hold down our Orb of Storm, and it will generate infusions without overriding itself, because it expires before we cast the next one. So you're seeing here, we're gaining all the infusions consistently. You'll also know that we're gaining 3 different types of elemental infusion. That is because we're taking elemental equilibrium. We're going to use these infusion later on with the other buffs. Right now, this is just to showcase that Orb of Storm creates infusions for us consistently. You don't really need this during mapping. I only use this for bossing, because for mapping, our damage is plenty enough already. So yeah. But one thing you'll think of... because we have so much reduced skill effect duration, buffs don't really last long, other than time of need and Orb of Storm, which we do want to reduce the skill effect. So what we do is we have a weapon swap. So we have right here reduced skill effect duration on our weapon set 1. And once we switch to weapon set 2, it allocates these increased skill effect duration. So we can have all of our damage and his scattering calamity on our weapon set 1. And we could assign so that all of our buffs are assigned to weapon set 2, which has increased skill effect duration here, as you can see here. And we're also grabbing some exposure effect as well as curse effects with our weapon set 2. So with that, we could consistently gain high duration buffs and debuffs on enemy and ourselves. So first one we're using is, since we're weapon swapping already, okay, so the weapon doesn't really matter. All you want is a lot of increased cast speed, which makes your buffing and debuffing better, faster. And you also want level of, you could do all spell skills. I'm doing all fire spell because that works on both elemental weakness as well as flame wall, which I'll explain later. But we also have Sigil of Power from Chiming Staff. So normally Sigil of Power gains grants us more spell damage per stage as long as we cast within it. And but we have to spend enough mana, 50% of our maximum mana while we're in it. But because we're going blood magic, we don't have any mana. So 50% of 0 is still 0. So any cast in it would actually increase our Sigil of Power per second, because there's a limit on how fast we could gain stages. But any cast will just instantly stack it to 4. So this gives us a really nice 60% more spell damage, basically for free. So that is our first buff. Our second buff that uses the second weapon set is Flame Wall. So notice that we're casting his Scattering Calamity as well as Frost Darts, which are both projectiles. So we could actually put down Flame Wall that, while passing through, it gives us fire damage. And if you recall, because we're generating all 3 types of infusion with our Orb of Storm, Flame Wall also gives us lightning damage when our projectile passes through. So we're gaining projectile damage, added damage with both of these effects. Now, you will notice because we have plus level to all fire spell skill, when we are casting Flame Wall, which we assign to only cast with Weapon 2, we actually have a level 32 Flame Wall, which is really high. So it grants a lot of added damage to our projectiles. And it might not look like a lot of damage, but remember, we're firing tens of hundreds of projectiles per second. So this is plenty enough. And Flame Wall is a huge damage boost to us. And yeah. Now for our third buff, we're using Frost Bomb because we want to debuff enemies. So Frost Bomb here, the elemental exposure time actually scales with increased skill effect duration as well. So with weapon set 2, it lasts forever, basically. I think it lasts for like 30 something seconds if I recall. But yeah, so yeah, 22 seconds. With Frost Bomb, we have prolonged duration, potent exposure, and long fuse with rapid casting just to make it easier for us. And we have exposure effects on our second weapon set tree as well. So we're debuffing with Frost Bomb up to like 50% negative elemental resistance. Pair that with elemental weakness, which also gets boosted by our plus level of skills to level 30. And heightened curse as well as scum curse effect on our tree. Our curses last very long, and they also debuff enemies a lot. We also use Curse Ground because if we make it so we have magnified area and as well as ritualistic curse, we don't really care about the more delay because we're using a Curse Ground anyway. So we could pre-fire it before we fight the boss. So with those, the Curse Ground is enormous. And we have a limit of 2. So 2 Curse Ground with Elemental Weakness basically covers most boss arenas. Even if the boss moves out, you could just cast again. And if you want like large amount of regen, you can just also spam it because curses cost a lot of mana. But yeah. So this is the thing that you want to put down before you fight a boss, just to cover the arena. Now, yes. Last but not least is Ice Nova. You will notice we have Ice Nova, and the only purpose for Ice Nova is to create chilled ground, because we're using Frost Dart for our 2 triggers. Frost Dart actually leaves ice chunks when it hits a chilled enemy. So when it hits a chilled enemy, normally it leaves like these frost darts that shoot out and deals AoE damage on the ground. Now, we want this because this is a huge damage boost to us, and if the boss is big enough, it can actually shotgun. So, we want to use Ice Nova, and since we're generating Ice Infusion with our Orb of Storm already, we can have 3 stacks of Cold Infusion, and we could use Ice Nova, and it will leave Chill Ground. So this is also something that you put down before you fight a boss. And you'll notice the chilled ground actually stays a long time, and it also expands. That is because we're using persistent ground and encroaching ground, astral projection, so it doesn't just cast around us, and prolonged duration and magnify area just to cover the entire arena. So during boss fight, the entire arena will be covered with your curse ground as well as chilled ground. So this consistently chills the boss. So fun fact, the ice chunks that are generated from Frost Dart actually also benefits from our Flame Wall. So essentially we're adding twice the added projectile damage, because what happens is once a Frost Dart passes through a Flame Wall, the projectile itself will be buffed by the Flame Wall, but the ice, if the projectile passed through the Flame Wall, the ice chunks created by those Frost Darts would also be buffed by Flame Wall. And you could see those effects. If you look at the ice chunks generated, they will also be covered in fire. And also shout out to KnuckleDust. We have been chatting a little bit. And he has mentioned that if you replace one of the trigger, ideally perhaps cast an elemental ailment with Arc, and use Bloodletting, which gains percent physical damage based on the amount of life cost. And you use, I believe it is Embitter. Embitter support, which makes it so all gain damage is converted to cold. your arc can actually reliably chill enemies even on bosses. So if you don't want to cast Ice Nova every single time you fight a boss, that is also a tech you could do. It also gives you a higher amount of shock because Arc has built-in shock effect. So yeah, that is also pretty nice. And yeah, that's basically most of the buffs and how the skill works in our build. For the passive tree, there's nothing really special. You have mostly invested in crit because our increased damage is taken care of with our main weapon with increased spell damage and maximum life. Since we have 5,000 HP, this translates to like 400 something percent spell damage. So it is plenty enough. You also get a few from like increased elemental damage, but you don't need too much of those. You could invest mostly in crit as well as armor. Because remember, we would need armor to apply to elemental damage so we don't die instantly. You also get a nice little bonus from armor from equipped body armor. And reduce skill effect duration, and mostly just crit. We have this meta gem here because this is also a pretty nice damage boost to and energy gain. Also, speaking of energy gain, one thing to note is that in one of my old videos, I actually have the elemental ailment with Ember Fusilet instead of Frost Dart. So I have been testing around a little bit, and it turns out that yes, in lower investment and lower gear, Ember Fusilet would actually be higher damage because it just has innately better damage compared to Frost Dart. Well, unless Frost Dart shotguns, but that only works on big bosses. But with higher gear, if your gear is good enough, if you're doing enough crit damage, and you have boundless energy, his scattering calamity is actually sometimes generating too much energy for Ember Fusilet. So if you recall, because his scattering calamity has a firing a limit, but the limit is kind of also bottlenecked by our cast time. But triggering does not, at least from my knowledge, doesn't have a cooldown. So what happens is we are triggering Ember Fusilet a little too much because we're generating too much energy, and it's overriding itself before it shoots out, even with so much reduced skill effect duration. So we switched it out to Frost Dart, and it works much better. We have higher DPS because you're not using compressed duration and swift affliction, so you could just plug in more energy generation and more damage here. So yeah, that's a net DPS gain. So that's most of the tree. As you could see, with weapon set 1, you grab the you can put some in crit, a lot of crit damage and crit chance here with weapon set 1. We have reduced skill effect duration. With weapon set 2, we have all the debuffs, we have the increased skill effect duration. And so it's not really a complicated skill tree. You have some nice jewel here with extra fire. So it contributes to ignite with our calamity. Chance for lightning damage to be lucky is good because lightning damage has a high range. And all of our damage has lightning damage because of Flame Wall right here. So making these damage lucky is a huge DPS gain. And for gear, it's also not really something special. The stuff we already talked about. All we want is a chance for spell skills to deal to fire 2 additional projectiles. We want his scattering calamity, and we want spell damage per max life. Switch it out to spell damage per max mana, or spell damage. If you want a lower cost, you could get one that has increased spell damage for skills that cost life. But yeah. With Helmet, it's just Veil of the Night. You could corrupt it, socket it with Armor Applies to Cold. The rest of the armor is just good life, good armor roll, some chaos resistance. I actually did not cap my chaos resistance, but with such a big life pool, I feel like it's currently, I don't think it's necessary. You can if you have the budget. I wasted all my money, so I can't really invest in chaos resistance now. Yeah, just good armor, good life, nothing really special. These rings have increased max life as well as armor applied to elemental damage. You also want maybe spirit with enough strength or intelligence. So you could get more intelligence. It doesn't have to be 140. You could increase it, reduce your strength. Depends on which ring is cheaper. But you want some spirit, so you could reserve 2 of the spirit skills, or actually 3 of the spirit skills. The other ring is the same. Spirit, armor applies to elemental damage, increase max life. Amulet is probably the most expensive, but you could start off with a cheap amulet. What is expensive here is just the spirit and the plus level of all spell skills. Remove one of them, is going to be very cheap. But yeah, you get a lot of damage from +3 to all spell skills, because it not only does it boost damage of Scattering Calamity and the trigger skills, it also boosts all the buffs and debuffs that we are casting. So that is nice. And yeah, that's pretty much everything about the build. There's a lot of puzzles that you could play around with. Go mana base. You don't have to go life. You could go energy shield. You have to probably get increased damage elsewhere, but it should work. Oh yeah, and we're anointing efficient inscription just so we could reserve all the all the spirit gems. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Fortune favors me.